Hey, it's Vanessa, the Crafty Gemini, and I'm here with a video tutorial on how I make my hair tubes. Now, I wear these often. I get a lot of questions about them when you guys catch me on Instagram stories. It's just a big long tube made out of stretchy fabric, and I'll share with you what I like to use so that it's soft on your hair, but I wanted to share with you why I wear them. Well, one of the reasons is because we live on a farm, so we're always exposed to like falling leaves, twigs, branches, and hay especially. So my daughter and I, if we have our hair styled, I like to have us wear something like this to protect the hair from stuff falling into it, especially when you spent time to style it. And you can see how long it is. The second reason is for bedtime. Once my hair is styled, not like it is today in a ponytail, but I will just put the hair in something like this and go to bed at night. If you have longer hair, other type of natural curly hair or locks, it stays perfectly styled in something like this for bedtime because you don't have any marks in the hair of hair ties or whatever other thing you use to keep it up, right? So if you just keep it in a tube like this, the stretchy fabric keeps it kind of condensed, but without leaving a specific mark. So that's one of the reasons for that. And then another reason I like to wear this is just for styling, right? If I don't feel like dealing with my hair today, you're having a bad hair day, you're tired like I am today, I just throw this on and use it like an accessory. So I won't stretch it out to the full length like I do at bedtime. Instead, I kind of scrunch it up like this, just bring it up above my ears, and then just adjust it, so it's kind of like a scrounchy head wrap look. The hair looks a hot mess back here, but here with some cute earrings and lip gloss, boom, and I'm ready to hit the streets. Super quick and easy to make, whether for yourself or if you know someone that has natural hair or curly hair, this is gonna be a great, quick, and easy go-to gift for you to whip up for them. So let's go over the supplies you'll need, and I'll show you how easy they are to make. All right, so the fabric I'll be using is called DBP, which stands for double brushed polyester spandex fabric. And the reason for that is it's super soft. It's a nice light to medium weight knit, kind of more to the lightweight side. It has four-way stretch, meaning it stretches in this direction, and then also in this direction. You're gonna wanna use something that has a good amount of stretch. I would say stick to something that has 60% or more stretch along the crosswise grain. If you're not familiar with stretchy fabrics, that means that the selvage, the manufactured edge of the fabric, between this edge and the next edge here, in this direction now, this is the stretchiest side, the degree of greatest stretch, or DOGS it's often called, okay? The degree of greatest stretch should be at least 60% stretch. So there are some cotton spandex blends that you can use, although those are more like medium weight. For these hair tubes, I like to use fabric that's nice and lightweight, but still stretchy. So I'm gonna be using this funky print that I have here at my shop. If you need to find double brush polyester spandex fabric, we sell a few different varieties, different prints, different colors and styles that you can check out, and I'll include a link for you in the description box below on where you can buy it in half-yard cuts like this. So from one half-yard cut, you can make 3 wraps. For supplies, all you need is some type of measuring and cutting tool so you can cut the dimensions that we'll go over in a second. Your fabric, a great quality 100% polyester thread. This is what I recommend to use when you're making garments or accessories or any project using stretchy fabric. Then you can use either pins or clips to hold your layers together. Then for your sewing machine, just make sure you have a machine that can do some type of a zigzag stitch because we're dealing with stretchy fabrics. We don't want the stitches to pop and it all to come apart when we're stretching it over our heads. So I'm gonna go ahead and make an adult size one from this. So let's go over the dimensions. Okay, so I have a half-yard cut. When you're working with this type of a fabric, it's usually really wide, about 58 to 60 inches wide, like when I open it, the full width of this, okay? Keep in mind that the way that it comes folded right off the bolt, just like if you bought it in a store or you order it from us, the top edge here is the manufactured edge. It oftentimes has little dots, and you can tell that it's different from the rest of the fabric, all right? So this is what we call the selvage edge. So from selvage to selvage along the width of the fabric is the stretchiest, okay? So that direction, we are gonna keep it like this. So if my selvages are here, I'm going to open up this strip and first of all, trim off the selvage because I don't want that in my project. So I'm gonna take my ruler and rotary cutter, you can also use scissors, and just cut the selvage off of your project. Okay, now we're going to measure from here over. This is going to be the stretchy part that's going to go around our head because we said that this direction is the degree of greatest stretch. So along that direction, I want to cut 18. And if you're working with exactly half a yard of fabric, you're basically cutting out one square that's 18 inches by 18 inches. So that's pretty easy. So there's my wrap. This is big enough for one adult, a square that measures 18 by 18. But now that the selvage is not in here, make sure that you orient this thing correctly because I want the stretchiest part now, still this direction, to stay right there going horizontally in front of me. Then I'll grab this edge, fold it over to meet the other edge. So we're folding it in half, pretty sides touching, and we're going to sew only along this edge first. And before I take it over to sew here, I wanted to mention, although this is a square, be very careful that you do not fold this way to this way instead, because you're going to end up with something, this direction has a little stretch, but it's going to fit a lot tighter around my head, all right? Because it doesn't stretch as much. Instead, if you fold it like this, you're reserving the stretchiest direction for the length, which we really need it to go around our head. So again, make sure that although it's a square, you have the direction of the degree of greatest stretch going horizontally in front of you. You can see how that stretches a whole lot more than in this direction. All right, so find the stretchiest side, orient it so it's horizontally in front of you, and then grab the right edge and fold over towards the left. That'll be an easy way for you to make sure you're orienting everything correctly. Now I'm going to match up the raw edges here. We'll pin. We're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance and a zigzag stitch or a stretch stitch if your machine has it, and stitch all the way down this edge. So if your machine has a stretch stitch, and I'll go ahead and find it on here so I can show you on the screen what it looks like. And it is number 2 in this menu for me. You see how it looks? Sometimes we call it a lightning stitch or a stretch stitch because it's a slanted zigzag. So it will still preserve the stretch in the fabric, but it will also make it look overall on the pretty side of your project like it's more of a straight stitch. So that's what we want. Make sure that you pick some type of zigzag. You do not want to be using a straight stitch like that for this project. The stitches will pop when you stretch it over your head. Okay, so we're going to go back to our stretch stitch or lightning stitch, and this is what we're going to use to stitch down the side seam. Now on these machines, I know that I don't need to change my foot. I don't need to do anything fancy to sew on this lightweight stretch fabric with this stitch. So if you've never worked with stretchy fabrics before on your machine, go ahead and grab a scrap piece of your double brush poly fabric and try it out to see if you need to change maybe to a walking foot. I know some machines require that. Or maybe you need to adjust some type of settings on your machine. But I'm just going to go ahead and do this because I know that I don't have to do much on my machine. Now, I'm just using about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Again, this is flexible. If you're not that good at following seam allowances, just use the edge of your foot as a guide. That will work fine too. Now this is an optional step after you sew it. If your seam allowance is kind of big, you can always trim it down, either carefully with a pair of scissors. You can also make sure that seam allowance is nice and flat. Take your ruler and rotary cutter and just shave some off of it. This fabric will not fray on you, so there is no need to finish off the seam like you would on a woven fabric. All right, now the last step is to hem the open edges here. Remember I said this fabric doesn't fray? You don't really have to do a proper hem by turning it under twice. It's going to be a little bulky and really unnecessary to eat up some of the length of your tube here. So all I'm going to do is I have the tube flipped wrong side out, and on one short side I'm just going to fold it back onto itself. Anywhere from 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch is plenty. So once I do this, instead of placing pins, I like to steam press this with my iron. And make sure it's pretty consistent. Again, does not have to be super duper perfect. Double brush polyester spandex is a synthetic fabric. It's polyester, so do not set a super duper hot iron on this because you can melt your fabric. So what I do is I kind of hover it across the top, give it a little steam, and you can press it down with your hand. Be careful you don't get burned, or a wooden tailor's clapper if you have one. One side, I'll make sure that I pressed it on the other side. Okay, that's one side, and then we'll do the same thing to the other. Next, let's head back to the sewing machine. We're going to set a zigzag stitch, and we just need to stitch around this opening to hold that hem towards the wrong side of the fabric on both of these edges. Now, I press it because now I don't need to use clips or pins. The folded under hems are going to stay in place for me so that I can just sew them up and be done. Now for the hem, I'm just going to select whatever the default zigzag stitch setting is on my machine, and most of the time this is going to be good settings, like 3.6 on my machine for the stitch width and 1.4 for the length. I oftentimes will lengthen it just to space it out a little bit because this is a lightweight fabric, so something like 3.5 or so for the width and 2 millimeters to 2.45 in length will work great to finish off the hem of our tube. So for setting this up, I'm going to open up one end, and I still have this wrong side facing out. I often start on the side seam. I'm going to slip it so that the pretty side of the fabric is facing up, and that's what I see underneath my presser foot. This will work great for machines that are already set into a table because you won't have to remove the free arm to loop this in. Then making sure that the zigzag is going to be going through both layers, the top pretty side here, and then also catching your hem. Adjust your seam allowance. I'm just going to use a little bit wider than the edge of my presser foot, and that's going to work for the amount of fabric that I turned under for my hem here. About 3/8 to 1/2 of an inch seam allowance should be fine. And just keep rolling more of it forward until you work your way around to the beginning. When I get to the beginning, I just go over those first initial stitches by a few. No need to backstitch, that's enough to secure it. And then just cut your threads. And repeat the same thing to the opposite end of your tube. Now just give it a quick press, again remembering this is a synthetic fabric. If you're using DBP, you don't want to melt the fabric by hitting a hot iron directly on the fabric. But I do want those stitches to lie nice and flat. All right, so here it is. I'm going to find the center back seam. I always like to put the back seam towards the back. And I'm going to scrunch it up like I did before to wear it as an accessory. Super quick and easy way to cover up your hair, to keep it up and away from your face is another reason. So again, if you have someone with long curly hair, natural hair, locks, stuff like that, this is going to be a great go-to for you. And if you want to check out the different colors and prints that we have in stock for the double brush polyester spandex fabric that I recommend for this project, use the link I've included for you in the description box below, and that way you can head over to our online shop and check out the different fabrics that we have available there for you. Now, I'm going to also include below a link to the blog post over on my website so you can get the written directions and dimensions so that you know how to cut this out for a child as well. So if you want to make one for someone that either has a smaller head or is just a younger child, go ahead and use the link in the description box below to head over there, find the written instructions as well as the correct dimensions to cut your fabric to. Thanks again for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comment section below how you plan to wear your hair tube, and I will see you in the next video.